For my money, the Baltimore Ravens have the top 2 MVP candidates, but they got something else on their mind. They got an old nemesis that just keeps on winning. We'll discuss that and more here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of the local experts that know your favorites like no one else. I'm the host, the barber, Tony Wiggins, joined today by Locked On NFL expert and my brother, Kevin Ostriker, Locked On Ravens and Locked On NFL. We're going to get into some stuff today, man. Let me let you know what it is. The Eagles, did they find their identity? Maybe a little chat between the coach and the running back on the sideline will make people back off. Maybe it won't. All right. Lions and 49ers are missing key pieces. The Lions got another bit of news that isn't really favorable, even though they're probably the best team in the NFC. We'll discuss that. We're going to lead off, though, doing something that we don't ever do here when I have Ostriker on. We're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens, right? Well, we're going to talk about them in a different way. We're going to talk about their nemesis and a coulda, woulda, shoulda team that's probably watching them going, man, that could have been us. So we got that and more coming for you today on Locked On NFL. We appreciate you making us your first listen of the day and for being an everydayer here on Locked On NFL, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again to Locked On NFL tomorrow morning for the madman, Tyler Rowland, for more NFL coverage. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. That's right. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, KO. That's what I call him, KO, because he's going to knock you out every time he come up in the building, right? Listen, I've been telling you we ain't going to talk about the Ravens while you're on. We ain't going to talk about the Ravens while you're on. We're going to talk about the Ravens while you're on here. Your team is hot as fish grease, man, in a fried rice restaurant, man. What's going on, bro?
Man, everything's going on. I mean, look, you talk about, remember, Wick, I'll take you back to 2019 and how good that offense was for the Ravens and how historic that rushing group was. And we were sitting there kind of after the year and we were saying, man, well, when are these records ever going to be broken, right? When is an offense this good ever going to come around again? And here we are 5 years later, the same team with the same quarterback and a lot of pieces that have been interchanged in and out. You put talent around Lamar Jackson and good things happen. They signed Derrick Henry. And I know a lot of people, Wig, they were saying, oh, we know that age number 30 for the running backs. That's the age where people kind of get scared off a little bit. And I know we'll talk about that coming up. But Derrick Henry, man, he's been everything and more. And it's crazy because here in Baltimore, we see Lamar do these crazy things. And we're just kind of like, oh, well, that's just Lamar. We've seen it so often. Like, it's almost like we're numb to it a little bit. Everybody else is like, what? That's crazy. And we're just like, yeah, he does that like 2 times a week. For Derrick Henry, it's been 7 weeks. He rips off an 81-yard run. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's just Derrick Henry. He's been that good for him. But the thing, Wig, that's awesome is that with this Ravens offense, I say this all the time. Before this year, it was chuck that thing up. Mark Andrews is down there somewhere. He'll come down. Whether that was the offense, it was Mark Andrews. And then, you had Marquise Brown back in the day. Zay Flowers was the number 1 receiver. Lamar spreading the ball around now. Guys like Rashad Bateman stepping up. Guys like Zay Flowers stepping up. The offensive line, Ronnie Stanley looks back. I know there are some concerns defensively, especially within that secondary. And I know the final score on Monday night was kind of closer than the game actually was because of the garbage time yards and touchdowns Tampa put up. But, I mean, this is a top Super Bowl contender. In my opinion, Lamar is way in the driver's seat for his MV3, that third MVP.
I got you.
And I think that, for this Ravens team, this is exactly what they were hoping for with their offensive side of the ball.
I'm going to lobby for co-MVPs. I think they ought to split it. Ooh, and I know people won't do that. They are equal. They just have equal value to me. And I don't know how anybody can watch the game and not come away impressed with Lamar Jackson and just know that this dude, he lost some weight. He worked on his craft. He has actually gotten better, considering that he has an obstacle that he has to overcome. And, you can shrink or you can stand tall. And that obstacle, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're rolling along at 6-0. And I decided if we're going to talk about the Ravens, then we're going to talk about the whole picture. They got to overcome the Chiefs. Listen to the Locked On Chiefs after their victory on Sunday.
And the Kansas City Chiefs moved to 6-0 on the season. They are the only undefeated team in the NFL. They beat the 49ers 28-18. They actually beat a team by more than 2 scores. This game really wasn't that close, and honestly, it shouldn't have been as close as it was at the very end. 49ers did get a score late in the game to get within 2 scores. But you look at this game and you look at what it means for Kansas City. They moved to 6-0 on the season. They have another injury with Juju Smith-Schuster. He missed most of the game after starting, and they thought he'd be able to play through it, but he came back with a hamstring injury. Worthy went out for a little bit. He came back and played and finished the game. They lost Jalen Watson during this game, and it sounds like it's a pretty bad injury. He was leaving on crutches, so that's going to be something to monitor. But the Chiefs are moving to 6-0 on the season, and they are the last undefeated team in the NFL as they go for a three-peat.
Well, there you go. My man said they're going to go for a three-peat, and with the records the way that they are, the injuries piling up, but the Chiefs still finding ways to win. Y'all might have to go to Arrowhead. Do you think you're better off going to Arrowhead because Baltimore just doesn't care where they play them at? I think they want Kansas City.
You know, there's this conception here in Baltimore, Wig, where it's like people don't want the Ravens to be the 1 seed because of what has happened over these last 5 years. 2019, they get the 1 seed in the bye. They lose to Tennessee in the divisional round. Last year, they get the bye and they beat Houston, right? They took a step there, but then they obviously lose to Kansas City at home in the AFC Championship game. The Ravens, and you can talk about this team really over the course of their franchise history, they thrive on being the underdogs. Both their Super Bowl wins in their franchise history, they weren't this like number 1 seed juggernaut type team that's coming through you. I mean, the Ravens in their most recent Super Bowl, they were the 4 seed. They lost like 3 or 4 to end their season. They thrive on being the underdogs. But with Lamar Jackson, obviously there's going to be some level of a target on your back. But at the end of the day, the Ravens know what team they have to go through. The entire NFL knows what team they have to go through in order to win a Super Bowl, and that is dethroning the Chiefs. But I do think if there is a team to do it, with the way that we have seen Baltimore play, that people forget they were a toe away, Wig, from tying or winning that game in week 1. Isaiah Likely's toe just hit that end line barely as time expired. So I think the Ravens do have a chance, but I'd be foolish sitting up here and saying, oh, yeah, you know, Chiefs are nothing. They're not playing good, 6-0 fake. No, you got to respect the Chiefs. They're undefeated for a reason. The injuries are piling up for sure, but that is the team that everybody knows runs the NFL right now, runs the AFC, and Baltimore knows that that's the team they have to go through, and that's a team with Super Bowl experience, Super Bowl championship experience, and that's valuable, and they'll get Pacheco back at some point. Wide receivers will have to figure it out, but man, I think we're heading towards another Baltimore-Kansas City AFC Championship.
I do too, and I just got to state this for the record. What's going on with Lamar Jackson isn't anything new. Peyton Manning had this happen to him. And I'll give you a little bit of backdrop on Peyton Manning. I live in SEC country. Peyton Manning could not beat the Steve Spurrier Florida Gators at all when he was in college. 3 straight years. And there was talk that he couldn't win the big game. And that's why everybody was thinking, a lot of people were thinking, take Ryan Leaf, right? Peyton goes to the NFL. T. Martin does what he couldn't do. He beats Florida and he wins the national championship against Florida State. And then the NFL people were like, see, he left and they got better. So that was stuck in his craw. And then he's right smack in the middle of the New England Patriots dynasty. But then he finally won, and then he won again. Drew Brees won at the end of his career. Brett Favre couldn't get past Jimmy Johnson and the Dallas Cowboys. No matter how they outplayed him, they'd always lose. Then he finally won, and he beat Parcells in the Super Bowl. This is nothing new. I like to live in the moment. And I'm thinking that I see a kid that is getting better. And not really a kid. Lamar's like 27, 28 years old, but he's getting better. He's improving, and he's doing every single thing he is supposed to do. I just remember people thinking that Derrick Henry was cooked too. Dallas thought Derrick Henry was cooked. And you look at Dallas now, they can't run the ball and they're soft. Listen to the Locked On Cowboys.
The problem with this team is that there isn't a clear statement of where this organization is. Obviously, they're in a soft rebuild. We've talked about it all offseason that they may not say it, but they don't listen to their lips. Watch their feet. Yeah. And I think if this team had come out and said, hey, we're trying to get our books in order, we're trying to clear some contracts off, this is a rebuild year, I think 31 other fan bases have heard that from their GM and their owner at some point, and probably would have accepted it without problem. But because this team refused to acknowledge that
they just don't want to be transparent that way, because I think they want you to always believe that they're going for it.
Since Jerry can't do that, Jerry can't not sell tickets this season. The Cowboys can't, tell the truth to their fans, and now everyone's very reasonably upset because the unrealistic expectations set by the team themselves are obviously not even being met at this point.
I think what people say and what they feel, sometimes they think that those things amount to wins. They don't. You know what amounts to wins? Knowing who can play and who can't. Folks gave up on Derrick Henry. He might break the all-time record and become the first person to get 2,000 yards, right? And the theme here for me is this: you got to stay in the moment, man. You can't look too far ahead. You can't look behind. You got to stay in the moment and acknowledge things for what they are. And right now, Lamar Jackson is doing things. He is doing. You take Cam Newton's best season, and this is like 3 times that. And Cam was an MVP. And I love Cam Newton, but I'm just saying the way he's playing, the way Derrick Henry is playing, there are a lot of people that right now are eating crow and then they're trying to chirp. And even Jerry Jones said today, well, he wouldn't have fit here. Well, you know what? Wade Phillips once said, if you got good football players that don't fit what you're doing, then you need to change what you're doing. And teams get it, and some teams don't. Now, some teams have a good program and they have injuries and they can overcome them. But how many can they overcome? 49ers and the Lions are in that category. We'll talk about both of those teams that are expected to do damage in the NFC, but that might look a little bit bleak with some of the things that are going on. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. Quite simply, they're just America's #1 sportsbook. And I say just because that is what it is. There's no arguing about it. They are America's #1 sportsbook. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. When you make your wagers, sometimes you have to leave that screen to go to another screen, and you have to look at the odds, and you have to go and check stats for your fantasy teams. And you got to keep refreshing. You don't have to do that. When you make your wagers, all of the information is right on the wager page, and you can just check each single game, check out the stats, look at live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. But getting started is where all the fun is. When you get started, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I ain't saying you have to win. I just say you have to place your bet, and that's it. You'll get $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel. You can have a lot of fun at FanDuel, man. Even if your team isn't winning, trust me, I know about a team that's not winning, but FanDuel can make it fun for you and put some money in your pocket for the holidays too. That's FanDuel.com. They are America's #1 sportsbook. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Talent Solutions. If you're not linked in with LinkedIn and you're opening a small business, well, you're going to be locked out. That's right. Because you'll be locked out from all of the people that go to LinkedIn and look for jobs. Over 70% of LinkedIn users, they never visit other leading job sites. They're only there on LinkedIn. And if you are hiring for a small business and you want to find quality professionals that are right for your role, that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because they have the tools to help you find those professionals. You can get caught up, especially when you're building a business, with permits and regulations. And forget, you actually need people to help you work, and you need to hire folks. And LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats, they might not have the time or the resources to do that, but LinkedIn will do it for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, moving along here with my man, Kevin Ostracker. We were talking about those Ravens indirectly, because I ain't going to let him do that too much on here, but because we can go all day. We'll do a 30-minute show. Yeah. But they're worthy of that. Some other teams that people consider contenders. We're talking about KC and the Ravens. I guarantee you, if you stop most people today, you'd have KC and the Ravens in the AFC, and then you'd have Detroit and some form of Detroit or Minnesota or San Francisco if they get healthy. And that's a problem right now for the 49ers. I've never seen a team get so depleted with their wide receivers and skill position players like the 49ers are. They got dudes out there running around. I don't even know who they are, man. And while they were able to overcome those injuries and replace Christian McCaffrey to a certain extent, now Deebo Samuel has pneumonia. Brandon Aiyuk is out for the season and has a real tough knee injury, and they're hoping he's ready for the start of next season, man. Kevin Ostraka, have you ever seen anything like it? Do you think the 49ers can overcome it?
It's tough. I mean, one of the things that makes, or I guess now made, that San Francisco offense so dangerous is the fact that you could run Deebo out there and you run Aiyuk out there, the threat of McCaffrey. And now we're sitting here and they're like, well, at this current point in time, they have none of those guys. And obviously McCaffrey, we'll see what his timeline ends up being, the actual timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But you can only lose so much talent before, you're not the same team anymore. And right now, San Francisco is not the same team. They're a team that relies heavily on their offensive personnel. Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. I'm not trying to say he's not, but in some way, shape, or form, the threat of Christian McCaffrey, the threat of Deebo Samuel. And I know you and I talked about this, I think maybe even last week or a couple weeks ago, of like Christian McCaffrey brings so much gravity, right? Deebo Samuel brings so much gravity. You can't just put another running back or wide receiver in there and say, oh, they're going to respect him the same way that they respect Christian McCaffrey, that they respect Deebo Samuel, or even fear those guys. So now with Aiyuk done for the season, Deebo sick, Christian McCaffrey still working his way back, it's tough for me to envision them being able to fully bounce back. Every team has to account for injuries, right? Every team has to go through it.
Yeah.
But to a certain extent, health is such a key factor in teams winning a Super Bowl or even getting there. And right now, San Francisco is getting dangerously close to having that be a major reason why they don't and are not in contention.
Yep, listen to it, man. You can hear the misery in Brian Peacock and Eric Crockett's voice here on Locked On 49ers.
All right, Croc, it's official. This from Ian Rappaport. I assume it'll be more of the same in the hopefulness that Brandon Aiyuk will be back to start the 2025 season, but it's going to be a long road back. According to Ian Rappaport, Brandon Aiyuk does in fact have a torn ACL and a torn MCL per sources, and there may be other damage that we're probably going to have to wait and find out about once they get in and do the surgery, which means it's probably going to be a complete reconstruction of that knee, Croc, and potentially a meniscus involved as well in a really gruesome injury to Brandon Aiyuk's right knee, done for the season. And hopefully, in the best case scenario, Croc, Brandon Aiyuk will be 100% ready to go to start the 2025 season, but that's not a guarantee. This is a really tough injury, and this is an injury where even if he does come back by week 1 in 2025, there might be more hurdles in him becoming actually 100%.
Yeah, you talk about hurdles, and I think the biggest hurdle is always the mental hurdle. All right, a lot of these guys, you get the surgery, they repair your ACL, MCL, and whatever else is going on, but trusting it at 100%.
That's the hard part of it. Hopefully they find out when they dig a little bit deeper today, no pun intended, that it's not as bad. Then you saw contenders last night in both. You saw with Tampa Bay, gruesome injury first of all, Mike Evans got hurt. He hurt his hamstring, and you know how long that can linger. And then later on in the game, and I know people giving Todd Bowles a hard time about it, but Chris Godwin, he got hurt and he's out for the year. You're starting to see a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position. However, self-inflicted things, and I don't know the details, but now Jameson Williams is out 2 games with the Detroit Lions, the other contender. So you might start seeing some movement a little bit on the wide receiver front, a little bit more than we already have, in fact, with these teams that think they're close.
Yeah, I think to me too, it's big because with a team like Detroit, who now also is without Aiden Hutchinson, that's an area. And I think this trade deadline week is going to be crazy. Like, I think we're going to see a bunch of moves. I know there have been rumblings about, is Max Crosby going to be on the move? Is that a potential thing for Detroit? But this wide receiver market, I mean, a lot of teams need them. Like, maybe Detroit wants some insurance for Jameson Williams. We talked about San Francisco. We've talked about Kansas City. New Orleans right now is going through. Like, I could just go on and on and on and on about all of these teams that need receivers. But in reality, Wig, like, how many teams are selling these? Like, how many teams are going out there and saying, yeah, we're sellers right now. We're going to get rid of our guys. Here's everybody that we're getting rid of.
Right.
Go take them. That's not realistic. So I think when you get down to it, some of these teams are going to be pretty disappointed because they're going to have to either roll with a pretty injured wide receiver group, or they're going to have to maybe overpay for a guy like, Amari Cooper's off the market now. Devontae Adams off the market now. There's still a couple of other guys that you could make cases for, like a DeAndre Hopkins or somebody else. But is that worth it for a team like Detroit, or would they rather go after a pass rusher type?
Yeah, and that's the key, because they played the other day without Aiden Hutchinson and they won, but it doesn't mean they didn't miss him. The same way the 49ers are getting running back production, statistically, they still stylistically missed Christian McCaffrey. Matt Derrick from the Lions even so much as said it when he talked about the pressure rate that Detroit had in their win the other day against the Vikings.
Victory Monday, and the Lions have it going on, and it's not just Jared Goff, it's everybody. The Lions have built something special there. You're seeing it across the country nationally, especially after going into Dallas and winning, going into Minnesota and handing the Vikings their first loss. You're doing this yesterday without arguably your best player. Offense, defense, whatever. You could make the argument that Aiden Hutchinson is the best player on the Lions team. Heck, there was a stat put out today. The Lions had 15 pressures in yesterday's game. 15, that's it. Aiden Hutchinson had 15 himself in the Seattle game, I believe, alone in one game. So there's going to be that discussion. What are they going to do about it? Should they go get Myles Garrett? The Browns are a mess. What about Max Crosby? That's going to go on until November 5th.
Look at you. You said it. You didn't know he was going to say that. I did. But you said the exact same thing with him. Teams can only, when you lose big time players like that, they can only absorb so many of them. Hopefully the Lions will stay healthy. They're still, I believe, the best team. And it's also a team I would love to see play Baltimore in the Super Bowl. I would lose my mind because they play a very physical brand of football. Speaking of that, we got a couple of physical teams we're going to talk about in segment number 3. One of them kind of found the identity, and the other one, well, they know what their identity wants to be, but they're just not good enough at this point to make it happen. We'll discuss that segment number 3 here on Locked On NFL. Got to let you know about Game Time, man. That's right. Game Time is the sponsor for today's show. It's also the place where you can go get tickets to anything. Football, basketball. NBA starts tonight. In fact, you want to see LeBron on his retirement tour, find out when he's coming near you and hit up Game Time and go get those tickets. Last minute deals, curation, all of that. They have an entire process that makes everything so much easier for you to do. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a play. It could be a monster trucks. Does not matter if they are selling tickets for it in an arena or a stadium near you. Game Time has it. You need to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. I'll spell it for you. LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today and get your tickets to any and everything you want to attend. What time is it? Man, it is game time. All right, moving along here on Locked On NFL. Where's your team every day? We always thank you for making us your first listen. Did you see Nick Sirianni the other day sit down with Saquon? I think Nick Sirianni sat down with Saquon. I think he knew it was a camera moment. I think he knew that there was a moment for him to get a little bit of get back and a little act right in a lot of people's mind for some stunt that he pulled at the press conference post game, bringing his kids up there to shield him from criticism, I believe. And then just this thought that guys, they don't trust him anymore. Did you see it? What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, and look, there's been a lot of Nick Sirianni controversy, and I think, first of all, if he had lost to the Giants, we would maybe having a conversation about a hot seat that is more than hot, and maybe not even occupied anymore.
What?
So, look, I think he understood what happened, and he's like, "Oh man, I kind of messed up. I kind of need to get this heat off of my back." And so, I still am not a Nick Sirianni guy personally. I know that we've talked about kind of what that whole thing was and what it has been with him, but the Eagles have a lot of talent. It's just like they haven't been able to truly put it together under him for the most. I mean, look, they almost won a Super Bowl, but like they didn't do it. Like again. You got a guy in Nick Foles who led that team to a Super Bowl. That's who did it. That's who was there. So in the end of the day, Sirianni's a guy that if this ship can't get fully turned around by the time the season ends, I think it's curtains for him. But I guess this was a good first step. And hey, having a camera moment with your player is not a bad thing for him in this situation either.
And maybe they found their identity by accident, just because it was a get back game for Saquon. Maybe they stumbled up on something. Listen to Lou DiBiase here up with Locked On Eagles.
The Eagles lead the Giants 14-3 at halftime. My biggest takeaway, first off, the defense looks incredible for the second week in a row. Vic Fangio has this unit playing alive after the bye week. He took every criticism to heart. They're playing aggressive man coverage. The pass rush has 5 sacks. Bryce Huff with a sack today. He looks great in that 4-point stance. Jalen Carter in on the action. Same with Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat. They're both heating up. The offense, again, this is a team that's going to rely heavily on their personnel and explosive plays. They lead the league in explosive plays. Got 2 today from Saquon Barkley on that 55-yard run and the 30-plus yard passing touchdown to A.J. Brown. But that's who they are. They're a run-first offense that can rely on explosive plays, but they are not well coached on that side of the ball. Another first quarter, they don't score. And they're an inconsistent passing team with Jalen Hurts. Like, he's not seeing the field well or playing well against pressure. That's kind of who they are. Lean into your strengths.
So that was a halftime report that continued. They actually continued to play that way and ended up winning that game going away. Sometimes you can accidentally find an identity. And I think the Eagles are throwing a pasta at the wall to see if it's al dente, to see if it sticks, to see if it's done. And maybe they're on to something, but I agree. We both agree that they're probably not the most well-coached team, at least offensively, in the league. Now, I believe the Chargers are a well-coached team. And I think there's a perception out there that they're running this archaic old offense and they're not allowing Justin Herbert to cook. Justin Herbert actually had a real good statistical game last night, and they lost. They just did not score.
Yeah. And again, I guess we'll start with the Ravens, and I'll throw the Ravens in here too to end it off, because with this Chargers team, obviously the offensive coordinator over there is Greg Roman. Lamar Jackson got a lot of flack playing in that offense. And a lot of that was, you're not watching the game with your eyes is essentially what it is, right? For quarterbacks, I mean, you mentioned it. Herbert had a good statistical game. Like, it's just they didn't go out there and they didn't put up points on the board. So for Lamar, it was always okay. He threw for 109 passing yards or 130, 150, but he had such an impact on the game. Herbert's a really good quarterback, right? I think Justin Herbert's a really good quarterback. But in this offense, under Greg Roman, I mean, the writing was on the wall when they traded away Keenan Allen and let Mike Williams go, and they fully went into this rushing identity. But the thing was, the rushing offense has been good. I mean, J.K. Dobbins has looked great for the most part, but Gus Edwards is on IR now. They're trying to put things together. And that O-line, the other writing on the wall should have been they took Alt over Neighbors. And that was the identity they wanted to feed into. So this is the Greg Roman offense. They're going to run the ball. They're going to try to out-physical you. But is a guy in Justin Herbert who in a different offense was slinging the ball around 30 attempts a game, 40 attempts a game. That's not what this offense is. It's not what this offense is ever going to be. And the Chargers have to adjust based off of that because they're trying to win football games in a much different way than they were under Brandon Staley.
You're right. And it's not going to, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a little bit of time. Listen to my man, Wade. I almost said Drogi, but it's Wade out with Locked On Chargers.
The Chargers played their ugliest game under Jim Harbaugh yet, and their missed opportunities came back to bite them in a brutal loss. This is Daniel Wade here from Locked On Chargers, coming to you after the 17-15 loss to the Cardinals in primetime in a game where the Chargers offense just simply didn't do enough. They had to settle for 5 field goals in a game where Justin Herbert threw for 349 yards with a banged-up group of skill position players. Something has to change offensively. The Chargers have now gone 15 straight drives without a touchdown, going back to the last game against the Denver Broncos, and have only scored 1 second-half touchdown since week 1. It's been brutal to watch, and missed opportunities were the name of the game, and we should have known it was going this way when Jalen Reagor fumbled inside the 5-yard line after a 41-yard pass from Justin Herbert, and the Chargers never got close to scoring a touchdown again. This one falls squarely on the offense, and something has to change. But for more on the Chargers, make sure to follow the Locked On Chargers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As a Ravens fan, since we're going to stick with the theme, you've heard people say it all falls on the offense when it comes to Greg Roman. But there's a theme to this show. We talked about the Ravens, physical. We talked about the Chiefs, physical, because they don't have wide receivers and they're winning with defense. We talked about the Cowboys, lack of physicality, and them admitting it. We spoke about the 49ers, a physical football team that is now depleted with some injuries at the wide receiver position. We spoke about the Lions, physical, right? We talked about the Eagles, their identity that they accidentally found was one that is physical, and now we close out with a coach that wants to be physical, but doesn't quite have all of the guns that he needs so far. So, Ostriker, I'm just going to ask, are we seeing a renaissance where the NFL is turning back to blocking and tackling and physical play?
Man, it seems like it. And I guess it seems like the Ravens were on this 5 years ago, you know, because everybody else was doing those air raid offenses. They were chucking the ball up 40 times a game, you know, getting all that speed in there. And the Ravens were like, yeah, we're just going to run the ball down your throat 30 times a game and good luck stopping it. So, look, it worked for them then. And I think the NFL, especially with the way that, you know, the offenses across the league now, obviously you have your star wide receivers, your star pass catching tight ends and everything like that. But in order for an offense to be successful, you have to establish a ground game. Part of the reason, you know, for example, why the Chargers or the Chiefs or the Ravens or these teams, why they are placing this emphasis on physicality is because if your ground game doesn't work, teams aren't going to be scared of it. Teams aren't going to be scared of play action. When you fake hand that ball off, teams will be looking at you like, come on, really? Really?
We ain't falling for that. You can fake it all day.
You're averaging 2 yards a carry on us. Yeah, fake that all day. We're not biting on that. You have to have a good ground game. You have to establish good physicality. That sets a tone, and then the rest of it falls into place. So I think
it absolutely does.
Yeah, we are doing that in the NFL nowadays, and I think it's honestly a pretty cool thing because I personally love that style of football.
I absolutely love that style of football. This is a gladiator sport, man. People get punched in the mouth, and it's about who can sustain it. And it's also about this. Do what your opposition doesn't want you to do. You know what your opposition does not want you to do is run that football. I'm telling you, I've talked to enough people, they would rather you sit there and throw it because you get a better chance of getting big hits, interceptions, the ball's in the air. That means when the ball is in the air, it belongs to everybody. If the ball is in the hands of the ball carrier, it belongs to him, and you got to try to take it. And if you try to take it and miss, he'll knock you over and he'll go score a touchdown. So good thing that the NFL is getting back to physicality. Locked On NFL is always here, man, and we're getting back to being who we are, right? Two shows. Tyler Rowland in the morning. The Madman will wake you up with a double shot of the NFL Espresso and then slide on by the barbershop and holler at me in the middle of the day for the second episode of Locked On NFL. Kevin Ostriker, who did I let you talk about today?
The Baltimore Ravens. And I'm looking forward to doing it again next week. We're doing it again next week.
We broke them all, baby. All right, y'all take care. All right, we'll see you for the next edition of Locked On NFL.